Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of the DFS show for Wednesday, April the 21st. I hope everyone is having a good Wednesday. We've got a 4-game slate on our hands today. Yesterday was definitely a good day for the show. A couple comments already. David says, first, I want to say thank you. I picked the perfect 2-line stacks. Really made some good cash. Cheers. Florida 2 was phenomenal, and Bennett was such a steal at that price. Peter B says, added Bennett and Knight to all of my lines yesterday. That's unbelievable. All I took was some Florida sunshine to get as far away from Calgary as possible for me to become a top 5 center. Am I right? As usual, great work, Mr. Seguin. Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Sam Bennett. Thanks for tuning in. Definitely a really good night for myself. This is the second, here, pull this up, bridesmaid week for me. 2 seconds in the last 3 days or 4 days or whatever it is. I looked like I was golden last night in the big $4, which is hilarious because somebody asked me a couple days ago, do you ever build like 20 lineups? And I don't normally. So then I went for last night 20 in that $4 on Draftkings, and I was in first with Matthews, Tavares, Nylander. I was like, this is mine. Last second, Mitch Marner 5-shot bonus pushed me to second. So yeah, bridesmaid week for me. Hopefully we can pull in a win here soon, but can't complain about second. So 4-game slate tonight. We will dive right in, break every game down like we normally do. If you're new, thank you so much for tuning in. Everything that you see in the Google Sheets here in a few minutes can be available if you join DFO Premium. And if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat, and I will get to them as we go along. But let's get into it. Have another good night tonight. And it starts early at 7 p.m. with Chicago hosting the Nashville Predators. Malcolm Subban confirmed for the Blackhawks. The Nashville Predators, unconfirmed who starts for them. Not really that big of a surprise. But I would expect to see UC Saros. They need some more wins. They just need to keep winning games, and UC Saros has been absolutely phenomenal for them. So really no reason to expect anybody else, but still unconfirmed, obviously 7 p.m. Eastern start. So 6:30 p.m. Eastern warm-ups there. Darcy Kemper, this is not even refreshed. Let me refresh my own website. Darcy Kemper is confirmed. There we go. For the Arizona Coyotes. Cam Talbot will counter for the Minnesota Wild. In Vegas, it will be Marc-Andre Fleury most likely. He was the first goalie off the ice this morning. They tend to rotate goalies anyway, so not really surprised there. And Josef Kornar will make his second career start for the Sharks. So looks like a pretty nice opportunity for the Golden Knights, who we were already all over the other night. And they smashed for us, and this looks like, again, just another spot for them to absolutely crush. And then the Edmonton Oilers will host the Montreal Canadiens again. Mike Smith versus Jake Allen. Carey Price out with concussion, so it's Jake Allen's net again. How does Toronto not score on that 6-on-4 for the last minute 21? I know. Like, I was sitting there, I'm like, I got this in the bag. Like, if Matthews scores, which Matthews always scores, like, of course he's going to score. He always scores. He's also Matthews. I've got this locked down. And then he didn't score. And Mitch Marner ended up taking the last shot of the game and pushed me into second. So I thought for sure they were going to score. I don't know what's going on with them right now. I mean, losing 2 to Vancouver coming off of COVID, it was not something I expected to happen. But here we are. So yeah, let's get into it. Basically, the only big injury news that you need to know about today, Ryan Nugent-Hopkins returns to the Oilers lineup. Riley Smith remains out for the Vegas Golden Knights. Other than that, and Connor Garland's out for the Arizona Coyotes. But other than that, nothing too crazy that should affect tonight's slate too much. I forgot to sort this properly, so just give me a moment. So yeah, we will start up top, as we always do, with the Predators and the Blackhawks. So Chicago 1 and Chicago 2 look to have a pretty sizable advantage tonight. Nashville 1, Nashville 2 look pretty good. Nashville 3 is extremely intriguing tonight. I will get to that in a moment, but obviously they don't look great here, but I will get to why that is. As for the matchups, Chicago 1, so the Patrick Kane line. Remember, this game was in Nashville the other night, and we were shifting over to Chicago, so Chicago's got last change tonight, so the matchups are definitely going to be a little bit different. It looks like Chicago 1 is going to go up primarily against the second and fourth lines of the Predators. The second line, which is the Kirby Dach line, is expected to see majority of the top 6, and then the third line is expected to go against the bottom 6. I'm a little hesitant to really break this game down from a Chicago standpoint because we really have no idea what their lineup is going to look like other than Malcolm Subban. They change their lines like it's just going out of style. They just continuously change lines every single game. Whenever they're trailing, they start changing things. So if it's Pius Suter that starts with Patrick Kane, maybe it's Suter, Hinostroza, and Kane again to start. But I wouldn't be surprised if it's, DeBrincat, Dach, and Kane by the second period. They just continuously fluctuate. So it's kind of hard to really get into it too much from a Chicago standpoint, but I'll go off of what I've got here, and this is just basically what they started and played over half of last game with Hinostroza on the top line, Adam Gaudette on the second line. Brandon Hagel did practice today, did skate. He missed last game with COVID-19. So I would imagine he slots back in, but he's been anywhere from the first to fourth line this season. So I really have no idea how to project their lineup with him back in, especially with Gaudette and Hinostroza in the fold now. So a lot of moving parts here for the Blackhawks. It's very difficult to kind of project what's going to happen. But let's just take a look anyway. So like I said, Chicago won against the second and fourth lines of the Predators. So the second line is not very good defensively. They actually looked really, really good in their previous game here against the Blackhawks. That second line looked really good. Luke Cunnin had a nice game. Gramlin, Yarncroc, they played well. They led the team in ice time. So, but overall on the season, they've had their fair share of decent offensive nights, but overall they play a very high event style of game and aren't very good defensively. So that does look like a pretty positive matchup. But again, it's hard to really say hey, yeah, let's play Suter and maybe punt Hinostroza and Kane. Realistically, the only thing I can take away from this is that Patrick Kane is a pretty good play tonight, and whoever ends up playing with him is going to be solid as well. So I do like Patrick Kane quite a bit tonight, which isn't really too big of a stretch, especially on a two-game slate. The second line will see the majority of the top six, which is the two worst defensive lines for the Nashville Predators. So if that looks like another nice matchup, I did say Dach and DeBrincat looked solid last game. Dach did nothing. DeBrincat did score. So I do like DeBrincat again. His price, I believe, came down a hair. He's at 7,100, so it's not crazy high. I do like DeBrincat again. The matchup looks really solid. Dach again at 3,700 looks good. But again, with the way that the uncertainty surrounding the lineup, it's really hard to kind of figure out exactly how it's going to look. So I'd wait until warm up, see how the lines shake out. Whoever's on either one of these top two lines, depending on how they work out, both of those lines should be pretty solid. But just kind of you're going to have to probably wait, make some changes during warm-ups. So you'll have a good half hour to really cram those in. But all right, let's talk about the Predators. So Nashville one grades out the best. They're going to see the second and fourth line of the Blackhawks, which, the second line isn't very good defensively, pretty well below average. The fourth line is right around average. So pretty solid matchup for that top line. But as I mentioned last game, it's very difficult to get too excited about Ryan Johansson. Basically has no floor. Rocco Grimaldi, he had only played 10 minutes the previous game. That 3,400 he was 3,400 last game. He only played 10 minutes again. So it's hard to get excited about him. If you look at the box score from last game, this line actually played the least amount of ice time out of all four of the Predators lines. So it's really hard to get excited about a line that's not playing that much, that just really doesn't provide much of a floor regardless. The second line, we'll see basically just the top six of the Blackhawks all night, which is the two worst defensive lines for the Blackhawks. So it does look like a solid matchup for Nashville too. It's very similar to what they had last game when it was in Nashville, and they had pretty good results. So I think that this, maybe this is similar to a Florida 2 situation. I don't love the numbers as a whole. Like yesterday, Florida 2, obviously the sample size was too small with Bennett still, but they looked good in a small sample size. So I'm going to maybe roll the dice with Nashville 2 tonight because they did look so good the other night. The problem is a lot of people who played Nashville 2 the other night won all the money, right? Because they popped off. They were super cheap. You played them with, McDavid or whatever and won all the money. So they're going to be popular again tonight. I have a little bit more interest in Nashville 3. And here is why. So their matchup, basically, they're just going to avoid the Patrick Kane line, which, on paper isn't very good defensively, but at the same time, Patrick Kane's line can hem you in at any time and really hinder. So avoiding Patrick Kane's line is pretty solid. Playing against this bottom 9 is a pretty nice matchup for Nashville 3. So over here, the numbers don't look all that appealing. Problem is, the sample size is still a little too small for me to post with Matt Duchene. But with Matt Duchene and Eric Howlett, their numbers right now are off the charts. It's a small sample size, so I'm not going to read too much into it. But the fact that the numbers are insane, I think they're averaging right around 4.5, 5 expected goals for per 60, which is just crazy. I can't include that small of a sample size, but the numbers are definitely look good. So that's why I have some interest in Nashville 3. They're by far my favorite value on the slate tonight. The matchup is solid. Matt Duchene's obviously a talented offensive player. Him and Eric Halla both shoot the puck pretty regularly. I'm not going to play Nick Cousins most likely, but at 3,100 with Eric Halla and I think 3,000 for Matt Duchene, the price is extremely cheap. They look like a really good value option. And as I mentioned, I think a lot of people will still flock to Nashville 2 as opposed to Nashville 3. So the ownership should be next to nothing on Nashville 3. So I love them tonight in that spot. I just, if they're able to continue what they've done in the first couple games, obviously, again, small sample size, but if they can continue that into tonight, they look outstanding. So I do like Nashville 3. The other thing that's really nice, obviously you'd like them to be on the top power play unit, but they pair very nicely at 5v5 and on the power play with Ryan Ellis, who is still underpriced. Ryan Ellis on that quarterback in the top power play unit with Howlett and Duchene and Cousins, if you want to include him. Ellis did go up a little bit, but he's still just 4,500. If you want to include Matthias Ekholm, he's doesn't quite have the same floor as Ellis. He's only 3,800. So very, very cheap, allows you to play these guys with pretty much anybody that you want and create and get very creative with your lineup build. So I do love Nashville 3 tonight. Hopefully they can continue to roll. From a power play point of view, Nashville very, very poor on the power play. They've been poor on the power play for basically 5 years, so it's not really a surprise there. But the Blackhawks penalty kill is still below average, so they should still have a fair amount of chances. The Blackhawks power play comes in slightly below average as well. Overall, their power play is not great. Predators have a pretty good penalty kill. So special teams should play a huge difference in this game, but obviously, one goal in a 4-game slate can really turn the tide. So, and then, in net, UC Saros grades out as the best goalie on the entire slate. Not really all that surprising. He's been absolutely outstanding. The Blackhawks have struggled a little bit offensively as of late. I think Saros is definitely a fine play. The fact that he's only 7,800 makes him really interesting. You don't have to pay premium for him. You don't have to pay top dollar. Like Marc-Andre Fleury at 8,400, obviously a really strong play against Josef Kornar and a struggling Sharks team. But to save $600 to go down to Saros, I don't think the difference is that great in terms of kind of his overall talent and overall upside on tonight's slate. So that is that for the Nashville-Chicago game. I know it was a little bit long-winded, but we only got 4 games to talk about anyway, so who cares? All right, Arizona and Minnesota. The other night, I didn't really love this game. I thought it was going to be pretty boring, pretty low scoring. I did mention that the only thing I'd really consider targeting was Minnesota's power play because it's been red hot. Evan, they did fine, but they're just super expensive, so it's really hard to get crazy about them again. Kaprizov 6,900 is very pricey. Fiala's come down almost a full $1,000. So Fiala looks like he's a little bit more in play tonight than he was the other night. But yeah, from a 5v5 perspective, this game looks horrendous. All 6 lines, I think this is the first time ever, grade out below average on this slate. Taking Connor Garland out of the mix for the Coyotes is a huge blow for them. It's expected that John Hayden will replace him, which doesn't, obviously inspire a whole lot of excitement. But no real hard matching in this game. Arizona won basically against top 6 of the Coyotes. The second line will face a lot of the Joel Eriksson line, so no real interest there. And then the third line is going to go up against top 6 of the Wild. Again, just it's hard to get excited about this game. I mean, if you just look at the offensive numbers, I mean, the only line that's even moderately above average is Arizona 1, which is Nick Schmaltz, Clayton Keller, and I can't remember, Christian Fischer. So, yeah, those are the only line that even grades out slightly above average, but I mean, they're not great. Fischer really doesn't provide you with anything. I guess he's an okay punt if you only have $2,500 left for the last spot in your roster. If he ends up seeing a decent amount of minutes on that top line, he could be okay, I suppose. Schmaltz and Keller are pretty cheap, but even when Garland's in the lineup, they're not surefire. My issue with Arizona 1 is they typically score 1 goal, right? They don't have a super high upside. They don't have that, I'm going to win you a slate upside, especially not against a really good defensive Minnesota team, I wouldn't imagine. So I just don't, it's hard to get overly excited about this team as a whole right now, especially with Garland out. So Fischer at 25, if you're desperate, maybe. Johan Larsson, I think, is a somewhat reasonable option at 2,800. He's more of a defensive centerman, two-way guy, but he just plays a shitload of minutes, plays on the penalty kill, will block you shots, will get a couple shots on net. That line has been a little bit better offensively than you might imagine. He does play with Phil Kessel. They're okay. They're obviously not great. They are going to see a decent chunk of their ice time, as I mentioned, against that Joel Eriksson Ekline, which is not a good matchup, but in the rest of their minutes, they should be okay. But again, we're grasping at straws here. There's not really a whole lot to like about the Coyotes. I guess the only thing that I would be interested in, obviously, Jacob Chychrun continues to play extremely well, 6,400. He's expensive, but he's worth it. He's been just outstanding for them this season. One of the best young defensemen in the entire NHL. And then Alex Goligoski has just been really, really steady. At 4,200, he's a pretty nice, moderately priced defenseman. Block a ton of shots. He's capable of hitting the shot block bonus. Also, the shot bonus if he really feels eager. He had 4 shots the other night, but he's got goals in back-to-back, points in 4 straight. Obviously, that's not really what you're banking on when you're playing Alex Goligoski, but I mean, if you can add a cherry on top on a 4-game slate, he could be the difference tonight. So I think that those 2 defensemen are interesting, but other than that, there's not a whole lot to like in this game from an Arizona side of things. And then again, from Minnesota, they're just not very good offensively at 5v5. They're very solid defensively, but they're not very good offensively. So it's hard to get overly excited about them either. But again, the power play just continues to go along at an extremely impressive clip. So, maybe it's a Kaprizov Spurgeon, maybe it's Fiala Spurgeon, maybe it's all 3 of them. If you want to include Benito and Rask because they're up there, fine. But mostly I'm probably just interested in playing Spurgeon. He's 5,300. He's been super reliable as of late. When he's not scoring goals, he will also block shots. Fiala's obviously been pretty hot. So the fact that his price has come down a full 1,000 is pretty nice. He only had 1 shot the other night, did score on it, but normally you can rely on a pretty healthy shot volume from him. Then Kaprizov, I'm a little concerned about his price up at 6,900. But if he wants to win the Calder, Jason Robertson's breathing down his neck right now, so he's going to have to start picking things up again. One thing also worth pointing out for the Wild is that Darcy Kemper has struggled in his first 2 games back. He's given up 6 goals on 45 or 45 shots, so not very good production from him. He will start again tonight. So if he continues to struggle, Minnesota could have an okay night. But again, this game looks very blah. Vegas agrees. The lowest implied total on the entire slate, actually tied for the first game. But yeah, so that's that for that game. We'll move along now to Vegas and San Jose. So as I mentioned, Riley Smith remains out for the Golden Knights. Nothing really changes for them. Alex Tuch, as I mentioned last episode, was probably the guy that was going to move up. That ended up being the case. So yeah, Alex Tuch obviously moves into a nice spot there. Matthias Janmark, obviously not playing on a great line at 5v5, but he is on the top power play unit. That was a change they made. And then they ran these power play units in practice this afternoon, so he's definitely going to stay there. So Janmark, he could be a decent punt option. Maybe pair him with Pacioretty and Stone if you want to, and Stevenson, whatever you want to do to make your lineup a little bit different tonight. But we'll get into all that. So unsurprisingly, Vegas 1 grades out as the best option in this game. Vegas 2 looks pretty solid as well. Both Sharks top 6 look okay, and then Vegas 3 just slightly below average. So Vegas 1 will go up basically primarily against the top 6 of the Sharks, so the Couture and the Hurdle line. Vegas 2 will see a little bit more of the third line, and then Vegas 3 will just avoid the Couture line altogether. So as I mentioned the other day, the Sharks just aren't very good defensively, but the second line has looked really good since taking Timo Meier off. At least defensively, their offensive numbers have completely cratered. They've absolutely plummeted, but defensively, they're significantly better. So maybe that's kind of the reasoning they've gone behind that. I think that these numbers are probably a little overblown. I think the sample size is probably a little small, but I felt the need to include them because when you use a larger sample, they are terrible defensively. And when you use a smaller sample, they're amazing defensively. So I think that they'll probably, without Myers, lean a little bit closer to this being good defensively as opposed to being atrocious. So that is that. DraftKings opponents that suck head-to-head, Meth and Vicar 1. I take their money every night. Whoa. Yeah, so, if you play head-to-head, go for it. And then, yeah, so Vegas 1, as I mentioned, they're going to see quite a bit of the top line, the Couture line, which is by far the worst defensive line for the Sharks right now. That Couture has been struggling for the last month. But Vegas 2 will still see their fair share. So I just think that you kind of have to roll with Vegas won tonight. They're just the hottest line in the league right now. Stone and Pacioretty are just in fuego. I don't love playing Stevenson, but I think you might have to on a night like tonight just because of how small the slate is. You got to try to get a little bit different. And that's why I said maybe include somebody like Janmark into a power play stack with them. Stevenson's obviously played pretty well, but at 4,700, he doesn't provide the greatest floor at that price, but obviously the upside's there playing on just the greatest line ever right now. So I do prefer Vegas 1 a little bit tonight. Vegas 2 just doesn't have this quite the same pop without Riley Smith, but Alex Tuck still remains a pretty decent option at 4,400. The line as a whole is very cheap at 14,800. So they look like they're in just as good of a spot as Vegas 1, just without the amazing upside. Again, basically the same thing I say every time I talk about Vegas. It's a matter of roster construction, right? If you want to play Edmonton 1, you're probably not going to be able to fit Vegas 1 in there. I messed around with it a little bit earlier. Basically, the only thing you can do without punting your goalie completely is play full Edmonton 1 with Pacioretty and Stone, and then that literally leaves you with minimum price for 3 players. So it's very difficult to play them together unless you can find a couple of really good minimum price players tonight. But again, yeah, so Vegas 1, definitely the favorite of mine. Vegas 2, though, is solid if you want to save the salary. They both look like they're in pretty good spots tonight. With Josef Koronar starting, he didn't have a great debut. He didn't have great AHL numbers even when he was brought up after the Dubnyk trade. He had like an 898 save percentage in the AHL. He gave up 4 goals on 8 shots in his NHL debut. He gave up that's wrong. 4 goals on 27 shots in his NHL debut against the Ducks. So the Golden Knights should have their way with him tonight, and both lines should be firmly in play. If you want to go on the other side of the coin with the Sharks, the top line looks like probably your best bet. The problem is they are going to see primarily those top 2 lines, which are very, very good at 585. So it's hard to expect them to have too great of a night, but they played okay the other night. It's hard to get the Golden Knights are just too good. So it's hard to be like, yeah, Sharks. I don't really love them tonight. I rode, San Jose 2 for a while when they were hot. They're not hot anymore. So it's hard to get too excited about them tonight. But the top line looks okay. The third line with Meyer and Gambrell just hasn't done anything. So it's hard to really say, hey, play them. And then the second line with Balcers and Hertl, and I'm not going to play Marleau, but Balcers and Hertl are maybe okay. Balcers at 3,600. His shot volume remains really, really consistent. He's like a Igor Sharangovich at this point, but just not quite as good at putting the puck in the back of the net. But the shot volume is pretty reliable at 3,600. So he's a decent punt play. Tomas Hertl, probably a little bit too expensive at 5,500 the way things have been going for him lately, but maybe them as a mini stack is okay. But again, I'm not too fired up about the Sharks tonight. In the power play report, Vegas grades out very, very well. The second best power play on the entire slate. The Sharks do have a pretty decent penalty kill, but they're the most undisciplined team on the slate. So the Vegas Golden Knights power play looks like it's pretty solid. I did skip over this one for the last game. The Coyotes penalty kill is not very good. It's the 3rd worst on the whole slate. And then as I mentioned, the underlying numbers probably don't do the Wild's power play justice just because they were so bad at the start of the year and now they're so good. The truth probably lies somewhere in the middle, and they should have a decent night, like I mentioned already, against a bad Arizona penalty kill. So, yeah, that is game 3, the 4th game of the night. We've got Oilers versus Canadiens. So, I mentioned last game that I was in on Edmonton, and a lot of you guys wanted to fade them, and it looked like fade was the play for a long period of time. And then McDavid got hot. Draisaitl was still a good fade, and I think Draisaitl is probably a fade tonight. The issue I have with this game is the Dave Tippett refused to announce his, who is going to play with who tonight. So we're basically just guessing. They did split up McDavid and Draisaitl last game. I think a little bit of that was necessitated by the Jujhar Khaira injury. But I think that they don't want Philip Deneau to take both Draisaitl and McDavid out of the game. So splitting them up makes a little bit more sense to me. So that's why we have Nugent Hopkins up there with McDavid and Puljujarvi. Draisaitl in his familiar spot on the second line with Cahoon and Yamamoto. So this makes a little bit more sense, but just let it be known that it is a bit of a guess. We don't know for sure. They would not announce it, but Edmonton 1 looks outstanding. Montreal top 6 looks pretty decent. Edmonton 2 does not look very good, which is not surprising because if you've been watching the show, you know that Edmonton 2 is not very good. So my whole reason for wanting to play McDavid the other night was that I'm like, hey, they're finally on home ice. They're going to want to avoid the McDavid-Danault matchup. Was not the case at all. He saw 53% of his ice time against Danault. They just didn't give a shit. They're like, he's going to overcome this. Danault can't stop him forever. Danault did a great job again. Gave him fits for 2 periods, and then McDavid broke through. Maybe that's what he needed to keep going, against this team to get going, and he should be able to carry it over into tonight. So he will see a lot of Danault tonight, a little bit of the third line, but mostly Danault. The second line will see a little bit of Danault, but mostly the middle 2 lines as well. So, I mean, it's hard to, obviously the Danault line's pretty good defensively, very good defensively, but it's hard to ignore what McDavid and Nugent Hopkins, and Puljujärvi have done. The numbers are extremely good. 35.9 scoring chances for per 60, almost 15 high danger. They're outstanding. So hopefully that breakthrough help. As I mentioned, even if they don't have any success at 5v5, the power play is a must tonight. Best power play advantage on the slate. They have the best power play on the slate. The Canadians have the second worst penalty kill to their own on the slate. So Montreal's terrible on the penalty kill, and the Oilers can break the slate, cash in on with a couple power play goals tonight, and really turn things around. So, I mean, I still like them at 5v5. I think he's going to overcome that matchup again. He had a pretty good night the other night. I hope that Draisaitl's not with him because it makes it a little bit easier to fade Draisaitl as opposed to fading both of them. Playing McDavid with Nuge and Puljujärvi is pretty affordable, 19,300 to full stack. The second line, like I mentioned, is terrible at 5v5. No surprise, Cahoon and Yamamoto just not quite the caliber of Nugent Hopkins. But yeah, I think it's pretty easy to fade them if he's not on that line. On the other side for the Canadians, that Danault line, I have a hard time playing them because they just, they're very good in terms of their underlying numbers, but they just struggle to score. I think, moving Anderson up there gives them a little bit more offensive punch. If they are able to control, the possession in the offensive zone a little bit, then Anderson should have some chances to score at 5,100. If that makes sense to you, that's fine. But spending most of your night chasing McDavid is not really a recipe for offensive success. I have a little bit more interest in that second line, which is Nick Suzuki, Tyler Toffoli, and Joel Armia, or Yoel, however you want me to pronounce it. That would be the line I would target from the Montreal side of things. It's really their best offensive players in Toffoli and Suzuki. Armia remains, super cheap again, just still 2,800. I'm going to continue to punt him. It's going to work eventually, I hope. But the shot volume is way down. I don't know why. Again, probably deferring to the other two a little bit too much. But at 2,800, he's got about as high a ceiling as any forward down there in that price range tonight. So I like Armia again. It's hard to get excited about the top line chasing McDavid. So Montreal 2 would be where I would go on the Montreal side of things. The way they, have this bottom 6 aligned in practice today is terrible. It doesn't lead to any offensive success for either line, in my opinion. So it's hard to get, interested in that bottom 6. So basically only Montreal 2 for me tonight. They did shake up the power plays a little bit. Suzuki and Toffoli are still together on the top power play unit with Shea Weber. So that's kind of, another reason I like them. Maybe it's a mini stack. You leave Armia off and play them with Weber. That's probably what I would do. So I don't love Montreal tonight. They're just not that good offensively. They're a pretty good team. I wouldn't want to play them in the playoffs, but overall, they're not like they're definitely no offensive juggernaut. So it's hard to, get overly excited about them tonight. And then, I did show them the power play report for them already, right? Did I? I don't know. Slightly below average. Their power play is not very good, but the Oilers penalty kill is a disaster. But the Oilers are pretty disciplined. Montreal doesn't draw a ton of penalties, so opportunities could be few and far between tonight. But just another reason, with that brutal power or penalty kill of the Oilers, I think that Toffoli and Suzuki are fine. They're the focal points of that power play. Suzuki and Weber. Montreal 2 tonight would be what I would do on the Montreal side of things. If I win, I'll refund your money because you provide so much value. All right, will do. That's pretty much it tonight. I will talk a little bit about defensemen. I'll go back to the goalies here. UC Saros, number 1 goalie on the slate. Cam Talbot, number 2. I've always been a big Cam Talbot truther. He was one of my big goaltender sleepers coming into the season. For season-long players, if you listen to the Daily Faceoff podcast, you know that. He's been outstanding. Mike Smith looks solid as well. Just like I said, the shot volume is definitely there from the Canadians, but they don't score a ton. So Mike Smith looks okay. I'm not in love with it. I'd rather play Cam Talbot for $100 more. Marc-Andre Fleury, I was a little surprised with how low he rated out tonight. I think most of that has to do with the fact that the shot volume is going to be among the worst tonight. So, there's reason for that to be there, but he looks still solid at 8,400. He has the best odds to win according to Las Vegas. And then, Malcolm Subban, Darcy Kemper, Jake Gallen, Josef Korenar are bringing up the rear. If I had to play one of them, it would probably be Darcy Kemper. I think Minnesota's offense is struggling too. Obviously they had a good game the other night, but I think if you had to go all the way to the bottom there, I think that Kemper's fine. He's, at periods of time during this season and last, he was among the best goalies in the league. So at 7,300 with an okay matchup, if you had to get desperate and go down towards the bottom of the barrel for goaltenders tonight, him being $100 more than Josef Korenar, I mean, it's a no-brainer at that point. So Kemper, I think, is okay. I wouldn't I'm not gonna build. I'm not gonna play him 50% of my lineups tonight, but he looks okay. And then defenseman. So I will actually pull up the other chart just quickly while I go run through the defenseman because I suck and I don't have a defenseman chart yet. So Edmonton won in the Vegas train, just rolling right along. Chicago does look solid tonight. I will give them that, but I do it's hard to play them because I do like UC Saros quite a bit. So, but I hope it's Doc, DeBrincat, and Kane. Then I can get behind that. Even DeBrincat, Suter, Kane, I can get behind that. It's hard to get excited about Vinny Hinostroza, Suter, and Kane. It really is. Vinny Hinostroza doesn't do much. So defenseman. I really like Darnell Nurse tonight. There were some injury concerns, I think, or not injury concerns. I don't know. There was an absence today from Tyson Barrie. Was not on the ice, so they didn't say anything about his status. So I imagine he's fine. He's playing, but it's just weird. And Darnell Nurse is just so good. His shot volume, his shot blocking is just so consistent. At 6,500, he's obviously expensive, but man, is he good. Roman Yossi's obviously outstanding as well. No reason to not want to play him tonight. But I don't have to tell you to play the best defenseman on the slate. Unfortunately, Alec Martinez's price came up a little bit. He's up to 5,400. Price where he should be. 4,900 the other night was stupid. He fits very well with either Vegas line. He pairs a little bit better at 5v5 with Vegas 1, pairs better on the power play with Vegas 2. So he's fine with either line. I do like him at 5,400. Ryan Ellis, I mentioned 4,500. He's outstanding. Alex Goligoski, 4,200. Really like him. Matthias Ekholm, 3,800. As we get down a little bit, Joel Edmondson is always he's cooled down a little bit, but he's still somebody who plays a ton of minutes, so I'll punt him, no problem, at 3,200. Chris Russell's a shot blocking machine if you want to go there. Brady McNabb still seems solid at 3,000. Calvin DeHaan definitely solid at 2,900. As we continue down, Wyatt Kalynuk, I don't even know how to pronounce that name, but he's actually been a lone bright spot here for the Blackhawks in recent games. He did leave last game after playing 1 minute with a hip injury, but he was on the ice this morning. He is a game time decision. He does see some power play time. He's played over 20 minutes a couple times. He does skate with Patrick Duncan Keith at even strength, so should play plenty of minutes. And then, like I said, power play usage as well. So he's okay at 2,700. I can get behind that. I think Ethan Bear is interesting too, especially if Tyson Barrie is dealing with anything. He did play 20 minutes the other night. He played some with Darnell Nurse. He plays quite a bit with Connor McDavid at times, so I can get behind minimum price Ethan Bear still. He was one of my favorite punts a year ago. This year has not gone quite as well. Not really that surprising, being bumped down to the third pair as opposed to playing almost exclusively with Darnell Nurse. But yeah, that's probably it. Jason Demers is kind of interesting at minimum price. He just, no power play usage, so it's hard to get too excited, but his shot volume's been okay. The usage is pretty solid, but I'm not going to sit here and be like, I want to play him. Kanishov has been pretty solid too. He's kind of coming around a little bit. He's played 21 minutes last game, plays quite a bit with Erik Karlsson. If you're super desperate, want to play a Sharks defenseman, you could do worse, but yeah, there's not a whole lot down here tonight. Nothing that really gets me all that excited. Maybe John Merrill. I have a soft spot for John Merrill. And yeah, Brett Kulak is a healthy scratch. Peter B. He's healthy scratch in favor of John Merrill. And I have a soft spot for John Merrill a little bit. He just kind of seems to get it done, a couple points every night at minimum price every single time. So he is making his debut next to Alexander Romanov. Probably won't play as many minutes as he did while he was in Detroit, but he should, he provides a very similar profile to Brett Kulak. They play very similar style games. And yeah, so he'll probably, if you look up Brett Kulak's minutes, 13 and a half, 14, 14, 16, 14, 18, 21, you expect something similar to that with Merrill tonight, and you'll be fine. Yeah, sorry. I mean, honestly, like I if you wanted to play Brett Kulak, I think you can just simply swap him with John Merrill and you'll be completely fine. So yeah, that is going to do it for this Wednesday edition of the DFO DFS show. Thank you guys all so much once again for tuning in. Please, if you're watching on YouTube, smash that like button on your way out. Helps a lot. Good luck tonight. Hopefully we have another good night. We've been rolling here the last few days. Hopefully we can continue. Brock, you should call Draftkings and ask them to buy out your website. We've had to deal with them in the past. I don't know if they're going to buy out the website, but they should definitely give us some more money. I mean, they just, like, every time I put a defenseman at wing on Daily Faceoff, they're a winger. Like, who is it tonight? What the hell's his name? The guy from Vegas. I can't remember his name right now. So many players, I have to remember their names. Vegas defenseman, Vegas right winger. Dylan Coughlin. Yeah, so he's a winger on DraftKings now after playing, as a seventh defenseman the other night. So anyways, thank you. I apologize for my Toronto 2 jokes earlier this month. You were right. They are good. I hope you and we stay hot. Best of luck, Raiders 7. Yeah, no, I lost a lot of money with Toronto 2 there for a while, but you just kind of got to trust the process, trust the numbers. They are good. At the end of the day, you were getting, William Nylander, John Tavares had a combined $12,000, sometimes lower than that. It was hard to pass up on that value. So no problem about the jokes. That's completely fine. They were well warranted. They weren't doing much. And friends don't let friends play Toronto 2, but now we do. So that's all I got to say. So anyways, thank you guys again so much for tuning in. Smash the like button on your way. We'll see you back here. Same time, same place, 5:15 p.m. Eastern on Thursday. Hopefully you all come back with more money in your bankroll than you have tonight. Goodbye.